Hello and welcome to another episode of Truth Seekers. We have Victoria joining us today, but before we invite her on and engage her in some conversation, we'd like to let you know you can find us at proadvisorcoach.com. Anywhere you watch your podcasts, we're on YouTube and Apple Podcasts, and we're also encouraging you to submit questions for our mailbag segment. Dropbox, iCloud, email, YouTube link, whatever, we'll air it on the episode. We will engage you. We will answer your questions. Thank you for your participation. Without further ado, we bring in Victoria. Victoria, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So you and I have connected a little bit. I think your business is super interesting and your approach that you take is very unique. And maybe you'd like to just touch upon that real quick. And I'm sure there'll be tons of questions that Coach and I have off of that.
Sure, thanks. So a lot of people might not know this about me right off the bat, but I came from a teaching background, and a lot of what I did as a teacher was, basically the same thing I'm doing as a marketer is, trying to figure out, based on like how the brain works and the way that we like to learn is how can we deliver a lasting message as efficiently as possible, right? Like, the whole point of teaching is that you teach something in a way that your students will be able to retrieve that knowledge forever, and or to help them figure out how they learn so they can teach themselves in the future. And then, there's really no difference between like the way your brain takes in information, whether it's learning or whether it's just, looking at, marketing materials. It's the same goal is to like get the message to the consumer or the student in a way that's, really like indelible, like it sticks with them forever. When they think of like a solution, your solution is the one that's top of mind because, hopefully if you did your marketing properly, then that message should really be stuck and easy to retrieve.
That's so cool. So there's science behind this, right? Where does that come in? Like how much research is behind this and how do we know for sure? Like I think of it like we're kind of hacking into something, but it's hacking into it in a good way. Like it's closing the gap between what people want and how quickly you can give it to them. Is that right?
Yes. Yeah. And so the concepts kind of come from neuromarketing tactics. And a lot of people are scared by the word neuromarketing. I've heard, I've done like some surveys and people say like they don't like it, it's manipulative, it's like mind control, and that's not what it is. The basic point is like you're not removing the element of choice from the consumer. All you're doing is helping them reach a solution efficiently, or presenting your solution in a way that helps them make that connection faster, And so the way we kind of apply neuromarketing to our marketing strategies is we call it conversion hacking, because there is a lot of, there are a lot of like little steps that can affect your conversions that people kind of neglect. Like people think of conversions and they think like, oh, well, it's just my design. My design needs to be really great on my sales funnels, but there's all this work and research that comes in before that, so that, you kind of have the full picture. It's not like, it's like having like a really beautiful car, but the engine's crap, and versus like, having like a really ugly car, but the engine's great, and we want both, right? We want your business to operate like that car that's beautiful, but it also has an amazing engine and, gets you the conversions that you want without, wasting time, wasting money on things that like don't work,
So cool. Coach, I'm thinking about like not even giving you a turn. I have so many questions. I just want to engage and talk to her one-on-one, but what's your takeaway? What do you want to ask her?
I'm good just listening as well. It's fantastic. Really cool. I think like what I like is shining a light on the fact that like people's minds work in a certain way and people want to see certain things. And because I love this distinction. I love just addressing the fact that people think of it like you're trying to make people do stuff. You can't make people do stuff, but you can help them see things that perhaps are what they want. Like it's creating influence. So I love that thought process. Like, which part of it like do you like the most? Like, because it sounds like there's a combination of things here. But coming from that teaching background, what part of it makes you go, yeah, this is really great?
Yeah, definitely like the science Well, I
Yeah.
like a little bit of both. I like the science behind it. I worked in a neuroscience lab and like studied brains and like how brains learn, how motor learning specifically. And, there's a lot of, kind of like I was saying, like to the brain, there is no difference between like taking in information, whether you're learning it in a classroom or just taking it in from a ad. And so it's just, I've always been that kind of person that like, when I see something happening or seeing the way the brain operates, I want to understand like, but why does it do that? And so that's kind of what led me to start my podcast, which is like, but why though? So we take like a common, like, aspect of marketing psychology and look at like, but why does that work though? Like, why do we use like simplified language in sales copy? Or, but why do we use Facebook ads? Or, we, basically break down like one thing every week to find out like, why does that work? Or why should you be doing it basically? And it always comes down to like really basic things, right? And it's, this is, the reason I like the science is that it's kind of exposing the fact that, we're not doing anything to manipulate the brain. We're just taking, instincts that our brains have developed over like thousands or millions of years and presenting information in a way that the brain is optimized to, take in. It's like, it all comes down to like really basic, like primitive stuff like survival instincts and perception and facial recognition. It's like, how did the species like learn to survive? That was by connecting with other humans. So if, we understand that, then we understand how important it is to, like show your face in your own business and show up online and like create like a personality to go with your brand and stuff like that. Those are like, I wouldn't say those are things that people overlook, but it's things I think people tend to undervalue sometimes or take for granted that like, oh, people don't really care who I am. It's like, no, it really does
Really
make a
do.
difference.
That's really cool because I think it's, for me, what you just said stuck out was that people kind of, maybe in business, people will inherently understand those things are important, but maybe not to the depth of which they are, and certainly not why. So be able to have that kind of overlay of the science on top of like this, rather than this works, here's the result. So it's like, this is why this works. So you can then come and jump on board for the principle. It's like, okay, and then you can have fun with it as well, right? It's like, okay, well, let's play with this and experiment and see what the best version of this is for your business or your particular area of focus. That's super cool.
Right. And then the other part of it that I like is like, kind of like the flip side of that is like, once you understand those things, then you get to be creative. And so like designing the landing pages and, websites and stuff that in a way that's, it's checking all the boxes in terms of like, conversion hacking or whatever, but it's also like fun and creative. Like I was a really artistic kid musician. So I like really like the, creativity aspect of it too. So it's kind of like, for me, it's like the perfect combination of like the geeky science nerd stuff that kind of like legitimizes like, this is why you do things. And then like the artistic part where I get to just kind of like let it flow.
So
Oh,
cool.
coach, that dichotomy again between structure and freedom. I love it.
I'm wondering, Victoria, if you could dive a little bit deeper on like, so I took some notes and I summed it up by saying just reducing it to the obvious. Like, and that's what I think the why question gets to. We work a lot as coaches with our clients to get to a level of, why we do something. What's the vision? What do you have of the future? Where do you see yourself? And then the more tightly we can tie ourselves to what we see ourselves having and the best version of ourselves possible, then it makes everything else fall into place behind it. So if you're doing the same thing with marketing and strategy and like thinking first, what's an example you can give to like what's obvious? If you were to reduce it to the obvious, what is the obvious?
I think to me, the obvious that I think a lot of people miss, like even like really, high ticket, high level coaches is like simplicity. Like our brains can become overwhelmed really easily. And, I feel like there's like this, this trend of making your sales pages longer and longer and longer and like telling more and more stories. And it's like the stories are great, but it's like everything, a lot of what we do in conversion hacking is, and we do this a lot with some of our clients, is we'll take stuff that they've already built and we just boil it down, right? It's like you really got to boil it down, And it makes it so much easier for you. Well, I wouldn't say it's easy. It's kind of like that Mark Twain quote is like, I wanted to write you a short letter, but I didn't have time, so I wrote you a long one. So it's like, if you want something to be concise and really effective, it's like you almost have to put more work into it. But on the customer's side of it, it makes things a lot easier for them, right? It doesn't take as long to read through the sales page. You boil it down to the most important points. It's like there's very, when we're talking about neuromarketing, what we're really getting down to is like, what kind of content actually gets to the reptilian part of your brain that is responsible for making those decisions. And there's very few things that actually do, or very specific things that actually do. So if you're, packing the sales page full of stuff that's not going to make it past that barrier, then you're wasting your time, you're wasting your customers' time. They have to read through all that crap, and then they're going to get bored. Their brain's going to shut down is basically what happens. And I think we're in a, especially after the last year, we're in a place where like everything's online, everything is being sold to us online. Almost everything we see online is some type of ad or sale happening. And so our BS meter is like a lot more sensitive than it used to be. And so it's like, you got to be really like clear and, use as little content as possible to be as clear as possible, because like nobody has time for that. Everybody, it's like, I was reading about a study recently where it's like people are getting a lot more sensitive to ads. Like they're a lot better at identifying an ad on like social media, because they always try to disguise them as like just regular content, and you get when it was still new, people would sit there and like pay attention to it. But now we're seeing them so often that we're a lot more sensitive to it, and so people will just scroll past it if there's any hint that it's an ad, or if there's any hint that it's not relevant to them. And so it's like, this is why this really matters, is because you don't have time to waste. Especially like online market, and I work specifically with coaches. So it's specifically for coaches. It's a $12 billion industry. It's growing every day. It's like, there's no time to waste when, there's like $12 billion worth of other coaches out there who you're, trying to stand out against,
So cool. There's so much there. That's it's just it makes so much sense to me to approach it from that level. And it's the science behind it, like you're saying, but then it's the actionable stuff that goes in, and we work a lot with that as well. So I'm wondering if you could, plug yourself here with what you do, and I'd like you to share your company name and who you maybe target, but what's your obvious, like if you were to narrow what you do down, because I had the pleasure to connect with you and to get some insight into that, and there's so much there, but what's your obvious? How do you narrow that down and deliver that in a succinct way for what you do?
Well, we work with coaches to, my company is Microcosmic Marketing. We're a digital marketing agency for coaches, and we help them to build an online presence and optimize conversions. And, more specifically, we help you to increase conversions up to 20% in the next 90 days or so. And so the way we do that is with our method. It's called conversion hacking, and it's kind of a 9-step process. And we usually start this out by kind of like just looking at everything you've got out there. So there's like a lot of coaches out there at a lot of different stages of their businesses. And we've worked with a lot who are, especially in the last year because of COVID, a lot of people have moved from like corporate environments to, building more of their business online. And so we've worked with a lot of coaches who are like, they're established coaches. They've been in business for ages. They've got plenty of clients, but as far as, building their business online, they've kind of tried to DIY. They've got other coaches who are telling them what needs to go in their tech stack, and they wind up with like this hodgepodge of like, tech to, market their business that's, kind of lacking like the strategy to like really make sense of it. And I've worked with a lot of clients who are like, I have, somebody told me I needed this app, and then I got this one too, and I can't get them to talk to each other, and it's just a mess. And like, Active Campaign is such a pain in the ass, stuff like that. And so it's like, well, that's what happens when, you don't have like the plan from like day one of like what needs to be done, what are the goals, like what intention do you have for using those applications? Because with the right intention, Active Campaign might be perfect for you, and sometimes it's just a matter of like the learning curve. Like some apps are just like if you're trying to like coach, you don't have time to like deal with the steep learning curve for like all these different apps and like a super convoluted like tech stack, and it's, you know, not getting you the results you want. And so our goal again is to kind of simplify everything. And so we kind of go through this 9-step process where we like study the audience, we study your competitors, we study your own offers to kind of identify what your star quality is, and that is something that will be reflected in your branding and your messaging. So it's like, again, like super clear from the very beginning, like what you offer that nobody else is. And then we also work with our clients, you know, depending on where they're at with their business. Some people already have branding, but we do, you know, kind of develop their branding and make sure that it's in alignment with what we've learned about their audience, the competition, their star quality. And then we also build out their messaging. So like, that's very clear. We have like a very clear mission statement. That's not just like what it is you do, but like what is the transformation? You know, I've noticed that, you know, a lot of people miss the transformation in their mission statement, or their mission statement is like so similar to other coaches, or they're afraid to get too specific because then they start sounding like other coaches, and there's just no connect there. And then we also work on creating like the lead magnets, and then like the customer journey. Sorry, first we work on your customer journey to make sure it's like try to make it as simple as possible, simplify that tech stack, but also simplify it for the customer. So from the point of discovery to like devotion, we call it, you know, once they're like in your funnel and they're devoted and they want to know more, we would try to make that process as simple as possible, remove any friction that would stop them from making a purchase. And then we work out like the lead magnets. So we know what we're using to kind of like lure people into your sales funnel. And then we also like build out the sales funnels, the websites. Like, you know, people think sales funnels and they immediately think sales pages, but we consider like your entire online presence to be your sales funnel. So if that means we need to like go to all your social profiles and optimize those, or like clean them up, or, you know, if, you know, I've seen people that have like multiple social media accounts and they're running one business. I'm like, no, you're making it too confusing. Let's, you know, tidy this up a little bit. And then, so just making that journey as smooth as possible, basically, and building out every part so that, you know, across all the platforms, your branding is consistent. Across all the platforms, your messaging is consistent. You know, people who find you and they're interested in what you're doing, they can find the answers they need to like make a decision on whether they're going to invest as easily as possible, you know, because you know, like I said, within the past year, there's like two kind of camps of coaches. There's the ones that are like, you know, they've had a very stable corporate career and they're used to working there. But then there's the kind of younger crowd that have started out like on Instagram or something. And so, you know, the older crowd, you know, kind of has a little bit more of like an internet presence. The younger crowd, they're relying almost exclusively on like Instagram or social media. And they treat it kind of like a personal account, almost like the content they post is like relevant. It's, you know, content that converts well for them. But when you think of it in terms of like, okay, if somebody visits your Instagram account or finds you on Instagram for the first time, or Facebook or LinkedIn or whatever, and their question is like, what are your credentials, or what is it you actually do? Like, if I work with you, what are we going to be doing together? It's really hard to find those answers when you've just been like posting stories and reels and highlights, and like how many hours of highlights would they have to watch to like get that question answered, you know? And, you know, until, you know, I sit down with them, I'm like, okay, how about a website? You know, you should have a website, or at least a highlights that's just FAQs. Like, it's really, you're making it really hard for somebody to like just know what you're about and like trust you without sitting through hours and hours of your content, which nobody has time for, you know? And so, like I said, I consider all of that part of the sales funnel is like, where are they going to find you? You know, what kind of content are they going to see first? How are you going to educate them? How are you going to kind of over deliver? What's your lead magnet going to be? You know, what are you using to get them onto your landing pages? And then what is the follow-up going to be like? So once they're on your mailing list, you know, you're kind of nurturing them and bringing them, you know, closer into your funnel. And then the last step of our process is to like launch all of that, you know? So a lot of marketing strategists out there, they'll just give you the strategy, and we can do that for you. If you want us to just like give you a map and send you on your way, we can do that. But we also kind of like build all those things out for you. So if you're like, I'm I got into coaching to be a coach, not to be a marketer or a web designer or all those other things, or a social media manager. You can be the coach and we'll handle all of the other stuff. So
There's so much there. Coach, what are you grabbing onto from all of that?
Wow, like I really feel the passion coming through, Victoria, because oftentimes, just as you said about like, if you're a coach, you probably just want to coach, right? And you're into that area of it, like that's your artistry and it's the people side of it. And then perhaps if you're in like the marketing side of it, you're thinking about like, what's the technical stuff I'm thinking about, like, or overlaying that side of it at least, like how can I put that together? What's the process?
mm-hmm.
What's so cool, the way that, and maybe I'm wrong here, but just what I'm feeling from you is that you got this balance between like, you know what it's like to talk to people and have that influence and speed and pace to it, but also can overlay with all the technical applications as well, which I think is really cool. That's what really jumped out for me there, and like the passion bringing it forward, because it's interesting sometimes, right? I've had lots of different conversations with lots of different types of people, and you can tell. I mean, we have our mind scan tool, which is really about relator, doer, thinker, the three different ways of way we think, right? And love to get your thoughts on this as well. It's like, well, it's people as the relator, the doer is the action and innovation, and the structured thinking is about process and procedure, right? And to get that balance across is you have to be very intentional about what those things are based on what your preferences are as well. So it's cool to kind of see that balance that you have. That's what really jumped out for me.
Oh, thanks.
Sure.
Victoria, if there's one thing you could share with us, right? Because we're kind of in your demographic for target clients here, but what would you tell coaches, or what would intrigue them the most about what you do, and why would they contact you?
Well, partly, I know for me as a business owner, like anytime I can get something off of my plate and know that like somebody who's really capable is handling that for me, that makes me feel really good. I get a lot of time back in my day, and it gives me more time to like do more with my business, help more people. So that's, for me, that's always like a huge selling point. But I think especially for coaches, it's, kind of getting back to what I was saying earlier was like, it's a $12 billion industry. It's growing every year. It's getting harder and harder to stand out. People are getting more and more sensitive to like ads, and things are constantly changing. And it's just like so much to keep up with. Like in order to like kind of stay at the top of your field, it's like something, or to like keep rising to the top of your field. That's something I think coaches are all that. I think that's the reason I work with coaches, is because something I have in common with them is like never just being satisfied with like where you are, but always like looking at what's the next thing, how can I keep improving, and if that's kind of how you run if that's what you're teaching your clients, I'm assuming that's, something that's also important to you, is to kind of keep improving, keep doing better. And that's kind of our goal with Microcosmic Marketing. It's, not just that we're going to set you up with your marketing strategy, build your websites and peace out, but we're there to kind of like help you can keep going, like your conversion rates might be great, but we're going to want to try to get them better, and, our plan is to, get you results in the next 90 days or so. So, there's not many people who can do that. And our approach using like the neuromarketing aspect, like I've been, looking around for people who are talking about this, and there's very few. There's a lot of advice out there about like whether you really need a website, whether you really need social media accounts, or whether you really need this or that. And it's kind of like, it depends on what your goals are, what your intentions are. But we're going to kind of help you sort out like what's appropriate for you, right? Not every social platform's right for everybody. If you need a website, but it doesn't need to be like a 7-page monster website with all the bells and whistles, we'll get you the kind of website that's really effective for, excuse me, really effective for you. And just make sure, and that's kind of our approach to it, is like that it's holistic. It's not like a one size fits all thing. We don't give like price quotes like through DMs or anything, because we really can't tell you what things are going to cost, because we need to know your business a little bit more to know what's really required to kind of help you reach your goals.
Yeah.
So I hope that answers your question a little bit.
More of that passion coming right through there, Victoria. I love what you said. I love working with coaches as well, because coaches tend to be coachable. Right? That's the thing about it, right? It's like it's enable you to do that. But I love the full support aspect of it, right? It's kind of like you take care of it. It's like rather than just saying, here's the roadmap or here's part of the roadmap. And now
Right.
you need some more of this. It's just like, well, we'll look after it for you. It's really cool. It's working in your sweet spots. We talk about that a lot as well. It's like if you're a coach, then you should be coaching, right? Or perhaps there's other things around you like, but you should be focusing on the things that you do best and let other people take care of things they do best. And then everyone wins. We grow the pie together that way.
Yeah,
Sure.
definitely.
That's my takeaway too, Coach, of what she mentioned about sweet spots. She used a different terminology, but just getting more time back, like something coaches or other people might not know about. You're the expert. You take that off their plate for them, knowing that they're going to get more sales from it. I mean, that sounds attractive to me. So, Victoria, I'll give you the final word. Maybe a takeaway, even for like non-coaches, somebody who might be watching this. What can they apply to their lives with what you do, and how can you interweave, the neuroscience behind it and all that to people who might not be coaches or might not be in your demographic for target clients?
I would say, I think I might just go back to simplicity. And like I said, sometimes that's harder than just, letting things flow. But if you're looking for some resources to like kind of understand where we're coming from, like there are neuromarketing books out there. And I think once you kind of read through those or kind of learn a little bit about like the structure of the brain and what the different parts do, then I think it starts to make a lot more sense, like why you should do things this way and why simplicity matters, or why like anything we do in marketing matters. And, I think that's always been kind of like the safe spot for me, is like, when I know how the brain works, then that answers a lot of questions for me. It makes me feel good about doing things that like maybe I wasn't sure about before. It's like, okay, well, it makes sense because, the brain, the brain works that way. So simplicity. And then, in terms of simplicity, I actually have it's a high converting one page website template. So if you're like, I need a website and I've tried building my own and it's a mess, or, everybody's been there, but this is our one page website template. It's got all the basic things in terms of conversion hacking, like basically a checklist of like, you put all these things on your website. It's not complicated. It's not hard. And you'll have like your website. It's done. It's, we give you some little tips for design, and it's a really effective way to just kind of like have a website without overwhelming yourself. Like in 90 minutes, build yourself a great website.
I mean, so much of what you're talking about applies to what Coach and I are building right now. So I feel like
Great.
more neural connections here is something more to think about. And either way, really appreciate your contributions to the podcast, and thank you for coming on, Victoria.
Sure, no problem. Thanks for having me.